I spent 3 months planning my sister's sweet 16. Every flower arrangement, every playlist, every surprise. Mine. Then Dad laughed across the table, holding his wine like a trophy. "Oh honey," he said. "We didn't actually need you to do all that. We just wanted to keep you busy." The laughter that followed was slow and cruel. I stared at them, the family I had killed myself to please, and felt something split in my chest. Mom smirked. My sister, Olivia, scrolled on her phone and said without looking up, "We're flying to Paris that weekend anyway. The party's cancelled." The air went dead. My heart did too. My name is Rachel Morgan. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been treated like a joke in your own family? Like your effort, your heart, was just a convenient distraction for their boredom? The cake order had already been placed. The venue had been paid for in full. $12,800 wired straight from my savings account when Dad said he'd reimburse me later. Now all that money and time meant nothing. I remember standing up, my chair scraping the floor like a scream. "So, all those calls with vendors, the weeks I spent doing this, was that all just a joke to you?" Dad shrugged. "Sweetheart, don't be dramatic. You always need something to do." I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just walked to my room, closed the door and sat in the dark. The word busy echoed in my head like a curse. Later that night I checked Olivia's Instagram story. She'd posted a photo. "Paris, here we come, 2 hearts airplane, thanks Mom and Dad." And there it was, the betrayal wrapped in pink filters and fake hearts. I scrolled through the comments until I hit one that made my stomach twist. Dad had commented, "Our little princess deserves the world. We're so proud of you." That night I deleted every group chat with them. Every shared calendar, every note. But I didn't block their numbers. Not yet. I just waited. Because when you've been humiliated by the people who raised you, you don't forget. You plan. A week later the Paris pictures started flooding in. Smiles, Eiffel Tower, champagne flutes. Not a single message to me. Not one thank you. And when they finally called, 36 times in 1 hour, I didn't answer. I only texted back 2 words. "I'm busy." When they landed from Paris I was already gone. Not vanished, just moved differently. The house looked the same from the outside, but inside, everything they'd taken for granted was quietly rearranged. The bills were now in my name. The mortgage payments, previously on autopay from my account, had been cancelled. The utilities were frozen under fraud suspicion. Even the Wi-Fi password had changed. My parents had always used my credit, my name, my effort, because I was the one who made things work. I was the invisible glue, the planner, the fixer. They didn't realize that when glue breaks, everything else falls apart with it. When they pulled into the driveway that night, I watched from my car parked 2 houses down. The lights didn't turn on when they flicked the switch. The air conditioner didn't hum. And within 10 minutes I saw Mom slam the front door in frustration. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just whispered to myself, "You wanted me busy. You'll see what that really means." My name is Rachel Morgan. And from wherever you're watching this, remember, silence is louder than screaming. Have you ever realized that the only thing keeping a family running was you, until you stopped? Dad tried to call. Again and again. I didn't pick up. But I did watch the security footage through the smart home app that was still linked to my phone, because I was the one who set it up. He paced the living room like a caged animal, muttering about unpaid bills and frozen accounts. Mom sat on the couch scrolling through emails with trembling hands. Olivia stormed upstairs yelling about no hot water. And there, in their chaos, I saw it, the first crack in their perfect little world. 3 months ago I'd been a background character in my own home. Now I was the ghost haunting it. They'd made me their errand girl, their emotional punching bag, their project. Now they were learning what life looked like without me holding it together. The next morning I went to the bank. Quietly, efficiently, I transferred the last bit of my savings into a new account. Then I handed over the file I'd been building for months. Proof of every time my parents had used my name to open credit cards, to take loans, to pay for Olivia's emergencies. The bank manager looked up from the papers. Ms. Morgan, would you like to file a fraud report? I smiled. Not yet. Because I wasn't done. Not until they understood what it feels like to be invisible, to scream in a room full of people who only laugh. By the third day I started getting messages from Mom. We need to talk. This is serious. Please come home. But home was just a building now. They had taken the meaning out of that word. So I let them sit in the dark, confused and frightened, and I went about my day like nothing had happened. For 3 months they kept me busy. Now it was their turn to be occupied, by fear, by guilt, by the slow unraveling of everything they thought they controlled. Because when you build your world on someone else's back, you better pray she never decides to stand up. The call came on a Wednesday. A soft, forgettable day, the kind that hides disaster behind calm skies. Mom always handled things with pretense. Pearls on her neck, poison on her tongue. So when the bank called her instead of me, it cracked something she'd never show in public. I wasn't there to see it, but I can imagine the exact moment. Dad at the breakfast table, Olivia filming some dance for TikTok, and then Mom's voice, sharp and panicked. What do you mean the account's frozen? That account. The one tied to my social security number. The one Dad used to fund Olivia's tuition and business trips. I'd let it sit untouched until the perfect day. Then I reported it for identity misuse, with documentation, timestamps, and evidence they couldn't explain away. My name is Rachel Morgan. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever watched the people who made you small suddenly realize you were the one holding the map? By noon I'd gotten 6 voicemails. Rachel, what did you do? We need to talk immediately. This isn't funny. Funny. That word again. They always thought pain was a punchline, until they became the joke. The bank's fraud department didn't need much convincing. When I forwarded the email chain showing Dad's authorization under my name, they didn't even hesitate. His voice on the call recording, "Yes, I'm Rachel Morgan," did the rest. In less than 24 hours, every joint account and linked credit line was under review. The house they thought was theirs. The mortgage was in my name. I'd been the co-signer at 23, the responsible one. They didn't read the fine print. They'd laughed about that too. Now they were legally squatters in my house. I didn't kick them out, yet. I wanted the realization to bloom slowly, painfully. The kind of realization that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., wondering when the ground beneath you started cracking. That night Dad called again. When I finally picked up, his voice wasn't angry. It was small. Rachel, we need your help. The bank's confused. There's been some mistake. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. There's no mistake, I said. You taught me to stay busy. So I did. Then I hung up. For years I believed love was measured in sacrifice. That being the good daughter meant giving until it hurt. But now I understood something sharper, truer. They never loved me for who I was, only for what I could fix. The next morning I visited the property office. I signed one form. Just one. It removed them from the deed entirely. When I left, I stood in the parking lot for a long time, watching the papers flutter in my hand. The wind felt like closure, cold but necessary. Back home, Olivia posted a story. Family drama face with rolling eyes. Some people can't handle success. I didn't reply. Instead, I changed the locks. Because when they came back from Paris, they walked into a house that wasn't theirs anymore. Now it was time to show them what that really meant. It happened at 9:42 p.m. on a Friday. I know the exact time because the security camera caught everything. The headlights, the slamming doors, the muffled shouting. I was sitting on my couch, lights dimmed, watching the feed from my phone. Dad's voice came first, booming and desperate. Rachel, open the damn door. We need to talk. Then Mom, shrill and trembling. This is still our house. It wasn't. Not anymore. The irony was cinematic. The same door they'd once shut in my face when I came home crying about work, now locked against them. I didn't move. Didn't answer. Just watched as Olivia tried the handle, then pounded her palm against the glass. Rachel, stop being insane. You're embarrassing yourself. My name is Rachel Morgan. And from wherever you're watching this, ask yourself, have you ever realized that silence is the loudest revenge? They had always wanted control, power, dominance, and I'd given it to them every time I bowed my head, every time I fixed their mess. But now, every second they stood outside that door, powerless, was another piece of me coming back to life. When Dad kicked the bottom panel, the sound echoed through the camera. Dull, ugly, hollow. It wasn't anger that filled me. It was clarity. That door wasn't keeping me from them anymore. It was keeping them from me. I called the police. Not in panic, just procedure. "Hi," I said, calm as a Sunday morning. "There are trespassers trying to break into my home." By the time the sirens flashed down the street, my parents had stepped back, startled like children caught in a lie. Olivia yelled something about family loyalty, and I watched the officer explain slowly that the house deed didn't include their names. That night I heard from half the neighborhood. Texts dripping with curiosity disguised as concern. "Are you okay? We saw lights. Your parents were here? What happened?" I didn't answer any of them. I didn't owe explanations to spectators. Inside, I poured myself a glass of wine and stared out the window, watching their car disappear down the street. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one left behind. The next morning, Mom posted a long Facebook rant. "Some people forget who raised them. Money changes everything. Sad world we live in." I didn't even flinch. Because by then I'd already sent the files to the IRS. Tax documents, forged signatures, fraudulent deductions, all under Dad's name, all with proof attached. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was accountability. Every secret they'd buried under my compliance was about to surface. And I wasn't going to hide it for them anymore. Because when they tried to break back in, they didn't just hit a locked door. They hit the wall I finally built for myself. And that wall was made of everything they thought was too quiet to notice. It began with a single email. A journalist from a local paper wrote, "Rachel Morgan, I received some documents regarding tax fraud and property misuse. I'd like to confirm a few details before we move forward." I didn't reply immediately. I just sat there staring at the screen, feeling that strange mix of terror and satisfaction that comes when justice is finally close enough to touch. I had spent years being their silence, cleaning up the mess, making the calls, keeping the family respectable. Now their respectability was about to go up in flames. My name is Rachel Morgan. And from wherever you're watching this, tell me, what would you do if the only way to heal was to expose your own blood? By the next morning, it wasn't just the journalist. It was the bank, the IRS, the DA's office. The system they'd always used to protect themselves had turned around and started asking questions. Mom called first. Her voice was tight, hollow. "Rachel, please tell me you didn't send anything." I stayed quiet. "Do you have any idea what this could do to our family?" Our family. That phrase had always meant their comfort, never mine. Dad tried to sound calm when he called. "You think you're winning, but all you're doing is burning bridges. We're still your parents." I almost laughed. "No," I said. "You're just two people who taught me how to survive lies." The next day the story broke. Local family investigated for tax fraud and credit abuse. De confirms active review. Their names were printed in black ink, but mine wasn't. I kept my distance, legally and emotionally. By noon, Olivia deleted all her social media. By evening, Mom's bridge club friends stopped calling. Dad's office announced he was taking a leave of absence. Me. I just sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, the same porch I'd painted by hand last summer while they'd laughed about Paris. The air smelled like rain and truth. It wasn't joy I felt. Not even relief. It was weightlessness. For years I'd been the family mule, carrying their secrets, their debt, their pride. Now I'd set it all down. That night I got an email from the same journalist. "Your documents helped uncover a pattern that goes back years. If you're ever ready to share your side of the story, my platform's open." I didn't answer. Not yet. Because this wasn't about headlines. This was about balance, the quiet kind that doesn't need applause. But then came the twist I didn't plan. A letter. Handwritten. Left on my doorstep. It was from Olivia. "You ruined everything. I hope you're happy. But when they're gone and there's no one left to blame, what will you be?" I folded it carefully and tucked it inside my drawer, right next to the first receipt I ever paid for their debts. Because I already knew the answer to her question. When the world started listening, I didn't become the villain. I just finally stopped being their victim. It began with a single email. A journalist from a local paper wrote, "Rachel Morgan, I received some documents regarding tax fraud and property misuse. I'd like to confirm a few details before we move forward." I didn't reply immediately. I just sat there staring at the screen, feeling that strange mix of terror and satisfaction that comes when justice is finally close enough to touch. I had spent years being their silence, cleaning up the mess, making the calls, keeping the family respectable. Now their respectability was about to go up in flames. My name is Rachel Morgan. And from wherever you're watching this, tell me, what would you do if the only way to heal was to expose your own blood? By the next morning, it wasn't just the journalist. It was the bank, the IRS, the DA's office. The system they'd always used to protect themselves had turned around and started asking questions. Mom called first. Her voice was tight, hollow. "Rachel, please tell me you didn't send anything." I stayed quiet. "Do you have any idea what this could do to our family?" Our family. That phrase had always meant their comfort, never mine. Dad tried to sound calm when he called. "You think you're winning, but all you're doing is burning bridges. We're still your parents." I almost laughed. "No," I said. "You're just two people who taught me how to survive lies." The next day the story broke. Local family investigated for tax fraud and credit abuse. De confirms active review. Their names were printed in black ink, but mine wasn't. I'd kept my distance, legally and emotionally. By noon, Olivia deleted all her social media. By evening, Mom's bridge club friends stopped calling. Dad's office announced he was taking a leave of absence. Me. I just sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, the same porch I'd painted by hand last summer while they'd laughed about Paris. The air smelled like rain and truth. It wasn't joy I felt. Not even relief. It was weightlessness. For years I'd been the family mule, carrying their secrets, their debt, their pride. Now I'd set it all down. That night I got an email from the same journalist. "Your documents helped uncover a pattern that goes back years. If you're ever ready to share your side of the story, my platform's open." I didn't answer. Not yet. Because this wasn't about headlines. This was about balance, the quiet kind that doesn't need applause. But then came the twist I didn't plan. A letter. Handwritten. Left on my doorstep. It was from Olivia. "You ruined everything. I hope you're happy. But when they're gone and there's no one left to blame, what will you be?" I folded it carefully and tucked it inside my drawer, right next to the first receipt I ever paid for their debts. Because I already knew the answer to her question. When the world started listening, I didn't become the villain. I just finally stopped being their victim. Silence is supposed to be peaceful. But for my parents, silence became a sentence. After the story broke, the phone stopped ringing. No invitations. No church dinners. No smiling neighbors. Just the sound of their own guilt echoing through an empty house they could no longer call theirs. I saw it all from a distance. My old home now stripped of its illusion. The windows were dark. The yard uncut. The Morgan nameplate by the mailbox hung crooked, rusted by rain. And for the first time they were living the life they built for me. Isolated, invisible, unwanted. My name is Rachel Morgan. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever watched people choke on their own silence? It's not the screaming that breaks them, it's the quiet that follows. Mom was the first to reach out again. A voicemail 3 minutes long. I listened to every second. "Rachel, please. We made mistakes, but you've made your point. You've ruined us. We can't afford the lawyers, the house is under review, your father's blood pressure." Her voice cracked. For once, it didn't sound rehearsed. I didn't call back. The next week Olivia tried. She sent a single text. "You win. Hope it feels good." But it didn't feel good. It felt like looking at a wound you already knew would scar. See, revenge isn't fireworks. It's erosion. It's watching what hurt you crumble slowly until it's nothing but dust. The IRS froze their remaining accounts. The DA pressed minor charges against Dad, financial misrepresentation. He pleaded guilty to avoid trial. Community service finds public record. Their names, once polished and pristine, became whispered warnings. And then came the foreclosure notice. The house they'd mocked me in, the one I grew up believing was a safe place. It was going up for auction. When I drove by that morning, there was a red sticker on the door. Bank property. I parked a block away, rolled down my window, and watched as a moving truck idled by the curb. They looked smaller than I remembered. Mom clutching a box. Dad limping under the weight of a lamp. Olivia dragging a suitcase, tears streaking down her makeup. It should have felt satisfying. But all I felt was distance. I didn't hate them anymore. They'd already become strangers. Later that night, I sat on the same couch where I'd once stayed up planning that sweet 16, the party that never happened, and realized something. They had taught me how to serve, not how to stand. But by destroying everything they built, I'd learned both. I thought about calling Mom, about saying something, anything, to end the silence. But I didn't. Because silence wasn't vengeance anymore. It was freedom. And freedom, I realized, has a sound of its own. It's the sound of peace after years of noise. It's the click of a door locking behind you, not to keep people out but to keep yourself safe inside. That night, I opened my window, let the cool air rush in, and whispered to no one in particular. They wanted me busy. Now I finally am. Busy living. Busy healing. Busy being someone they could never destroy again. It was almost midnight when the phone rang. Unknown number. The kind of number that feels like a ghost calling. For a moment I considered ignoring it. But something in my gut said answer. Hello. Pause. Then a shaky breath. Rachel, it's Olivia. My hand froze midair. I hadn't heard her voice in months. It didn't sound like the sister who'd sneered beside my parents that night. Sounded broken. Mom's in the hospital, she said. Dad's with her. Stroke. The word hit harder than I expected. For a second the room tilted. I didn't ask for details. Didn't offer sympathy. I just said, is she alive? Yes. Then she's lucky, I replied and hung up. But I didn't sleep that night. My name is Rachel Morgan. And from wherever you're watching this, tell me, if the people who destroyed you started to fall apart, would you help them stand again? By morning my phone was full of missed calls and messages from Olivia. He's asking for you. Dad's not saying anything. Please, Rachel. Please. The same word I'd begged them with once when I asked for respect. For love. For acknowledgement. Back then it meant nothing to them. Now it was currency they didn't have anymore. I sat in my car outside the hospital for almost an hour before I decided to go in. Not because they deserved it, but because I needed to see with my own eyes what karma looked like when it arrived in flesh and bone. Mom was smaller than I remembered. Tubes everywhere. Her hand twitched as if still trying to control everything around her. Dad sat by the bed hollow-eyed. He didn't even look up when I walked in. Olivia started crying the second she saw me. She's sorry, she whispered. I didn't answer. Mom's eyes fluttered open, blurry, unsure. Rachel. I nodded once. Her voice was weak but the words came out clear. We just wanted you to be part of us. I leaned closer. My heart was steady. You never wanted me part of you, I said softly. You wanted me under you. A single tear slipped from her eye. I don't know if it was regret or fear. Maybe both. I turned to leave but Dad finally spoke. You think this makes you better than us? I stopped in the doorway. No, I said. It makes me free. I walked out of that hospital and didn't look back. Outside, the morning sun broke through gray clouds, sharp, blinding, and warm all at once. I realized something as I stood there in that light. Revenge had never really been about hurting them. It was about seeing them stripped of their illusions, just people fragile and flawed like everyone else. That night, I got one last text from Olivia. He keeps asking if you forgive her. I typed and deleted a dozen replies before settling on one word. Almost. Because forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't about freeing them. It's about freeing yourself. 6 months passed before I went back. The town looked smaller. Or maybe I had simply grown. Their house sat at the end of the street, paint peeling, grass wild, curtains drawn like the place itself was ashamed. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a tomb for people who refused to change. I didn't plan to go inside. Just to stand there for a minute, long enough to bury the last ghost. Olivia was the one who opened the door. Her face softened when she saw me. "She's gone," she whispered. I didn't need to ask who. I followed her inside. The air was thick with dust and silence. On the dining table sat a box, silver ribbon, familiar handwriting on top. "For Rachel. Open when you're ready." I sat down slowly, heart steady but heavy. Inside the box was my old project binder, the Sweet 16 plans. Every detail, every design, every photo I had worked on. And on top a note. "We never deserved the way you loved us. I hope you build something beautiful for yourself now." Mom. For the first time in years I didn't feel anger. I felt something quieter, like the moment after a storm when the air finally learns to breathe again. Olivia sat across from me, tears streaking her face. "I wish I'd stopped them," she said. "You didn't make their choices," I told her. "But now you get to make yours." We sat in silence, two sisters who had walked through fire and come out different people. When I left, I didn't take the box. I didn't need to. That chapter was closed. Outside, the sun was setting, the same golden light that used to shine through my bedroom window when I was a kid dreaming of escape. I drove out of that neighborhood with the windows down, wind tangling my hair, music low. For once, the future didn't feel like something waiting to hurt me. It felt like something waiting to begin. As I crossed the bridge out of town, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "Rachel Morgan, Project Manager, Event Design. We'd love to meet with you about your proposal." I smiled. A real quiet smile. The kind that says you made it out. I whispered to myself, not as a vow but as a truth I had earned. I spent 3 months planning someone else's dream. Now I'll spend the rest of my life building my own. The rearview mirror caught one last glimpse of my parents' house, fading smaller and smaller behind me until it disappeared completely. And just like that, their story ended. Mine finally began.